And I was able to build both an audience and one-to-one relationship building with the types of people that could accelerate my career by putting me on or inviting me into their classrooms.
Welcome to Soundboard with Tofe. Here you'll learn all things podcasting to help you connect with your audience. And here's your host, Tofe Evans.
Hello and welcome to the Soundboard with Tofe podcast. Welcome to episode 12. So thank you for tuning in. Before I get started in this episode, I just want to say in Australia, October 2021 is Mental Health Month. I just want to say that because mental health is something that means a lot to me. If you are struggling right now, don't feel shame that you have to reach out and ask for help. Look, I go through depression, anxiety on the daily, especially anxiety. It's something that riddles me. And I just want to say that it's okay to say that you struggle with some sort of mental health illness, because in Australia, 1 in 5 people aged between 16 to 85 go through some sort of mental health illness in any given year. And if you are needing to ask for help, are you feeling rather low or you just feel like giving up, you know that Lifeline and Beyond Blue have dedicated people that you can speak to. So don't feel ashamed that you have to reach out to those people. Now, as I get on with the episode, I'm going to do this one a little differently. This one, I wanted to collaborate with other podcasters. And because I'm only working with a 5 to 10 minute time frame, I'm working within a boundary, I thought I would get creative with this. So what I've done, instead of reaching out to a guest to interview, I thought I would put a question out to a few podcasters I know and get them to put their input on it. So the question was, if there was one thing you wish you knew before starting a podcast, what would that be? And the reason I put that out there is for you listening. You could be thinking, well, I don't know what I need to know about podcasting. So this is why I wanted to give value to you and ask people that have had skin in the game what they're doing right now and what they would do differently. It's like learning from other people's mistakes. Now, a friend of mine, his name is Timmy Bauer. He actually reached out to me a while back to be on his show, The Purpose-Driven Entrepreneur. I had an absolute blast, and I'll put a link in the show notes where you can listen to the episode. We talk about mental health. We talk about all things podcasting. But the guy is an absolute podcast beast. And I say that with capital letters, an absolute beast. Because he has the Purpose-Driven Entrepreneur. He also has the B2B Growth Show. He also has Writing Better. He also has the Literacy Advocate. This is amazing. And he's a children's book author. So, yeah, what a cool dude. And so when I reached out to Timmy, he said, absolutely, let me know if this works. So this is what he said.
Okay, so your question was, what is something that when I started podcasting, I wish I knew differently than what I thought? Or I butchered your question. But anyways, here's where my brain went when I heard the question. When I first started, I named my podcast Books for Kids because I was a young, imposter syndrome filled, aspiring kids book author. And I thought, if I just interview enough successful kids book authors, eventually maybe the industry will start to see me as a successful kids book author who's worth paying attention to. And that wasn't what happened at all. What did happen was I made friends with some cool kids book authors and got to pick their brains, and that was cool. But it didn't do anything to accelerate my career. What ended up accelerating my career was when I completely switched my focus to the people that can put me on as a kids book author and the people that are my audience as a kids book author. When I focused on those two kinds of people, so people that put on literacy events who could potentially put me on a stage, making content for and with them on the podcast, and teachers who can invite me into their classroom, my books can end up in their classroom, those folks making content for and with them. And I changed the podcast name to The Literacy Advocate and changed my entire focus from being about kids books and kids book authors to being about literacy, like the broad subject of literacy. I was asking people in the literacy community, whether they were literacy event organizers or teachers, what are commonly held beliefs in literacy education that you passionately disagree with? That's something they all had an opinion about that made for great content for other people in that industry. And I was able to build both an audience and one-to-one relationship building with the types of people that could accelerate my career by putting me on or inviting me into their classrooms. And by the way, that strategy is called content-based networking. And my best friend James wrote a whole book about it. It's called Content-Based Networking.
Isn't that interesting? Content-based networking. So I knew he was onto something because I've done this before. I didn't realize it was called content-based networking. And I've looked into James Carberry's stuff, and it is schmick. It's pretty much how you reverse engineer relationships so you get to work with the people that you want to. So why not have them on your podcast so that it could turn into collaboration, it could turn into paid gigs. I've done it before on a previous podcast that me and a few friends had. We put it out there to the audience. We got a lot of community feedback. We ended up getting on this guy randomly, and then he turned into a client of ours where he was getting us to do paid speaking gigs. Random as hell. Absolutely random. But what has worked from this is, with Timmy's approach, he used it to get feedback. He used it to help him springboard his book. And I'm a big believer in how podcasting can help bring people together, where it doesn't seem so spammy where you want to interview a potential client. Going in with the mindset of, hey, I want to speak to you and ask you a few questions and have you featured on the podcast to get your insights on this. So with content-based networking, I've kind of done it for this episode by getting Timmy to submit his input on a question, but I'm not doing it to get him on as a client. I'm doing it to use his insights as value for you as a listener, because you could leverage your network to have as guests on your podcast. Use that, put that as content. That's a value add for your audience. You're tapping into your guests' audience as well, and it causes a knock-on effect. But if I were to break it down, content-based networking is really leverage, and it's two-way value. That's what it comes down to. Anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you for listening. Please share this with anyone else that you know that will get value from this. And I'll also put a link to the show notes for the episode that I did with Timmy on his podcast, The Purpose Driven Entrepreneur. Absolute fire from both ends. And just remember, it is Mental Health Month. So if you are struggling, don't be afraid to reach out and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And yeah, so thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening, and remember, your voice matters. Soundboard acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, paying respects to elders past, present, and emerging.